Ladies and gentlemen, the playoffs is when we find out the truth. The playoffs is when you can get your I told you so's off. And Legend of Winning made this video called I Tried to Warn KD. This is in reference to a confrontation he and Kevin Durant had on Twitter Spaces. Yes, Twitter Spaces last year. I want to see if the points held up for real. So let's get it started. Links to Lowe's video will be in the description down below.
I was right. I was right about Katie. I was right. I caught it. I caught it like literally verbatim. I knew exactly what was going to happen. It ended up happening. And here I am now having an I got you moment. I told you so. And it ain't hitting like it should hit. It's just not. It's not hitting how it hits. Yo, you all take a lot of fun out of this. It's just ridiculous. So for those who do not know, especially if
yeah, the I told you so ain't hit when the injuries are involved, man. I'm not going to lie. Yeah. I don't know, man. Y'all, it's cool though. It's cool.
you just stumbled across his page. My name is Legend of Winning. I am the gentleman who was in Twitter Space with Kevin Durant last season, at least last off season when he lost in the playoffs in the second round to the Denver Nuggets. And I had my gripes and concerns about KD. Maybe not KD, but more or less like how he's viewed in the NBA sphere, how people were consistently putting him in top 5 conversations. And I personally didn't think he belonged in there. And so I made it my duty, my due diligence to talk about how he wasn't top 5 and went on to express myself. And me and KD went into a Twitter space and I was right, but so was KD to an extent. Now
social media is so crazy. And that's definitely one of those what the fuck moments for social media for me. Because the fact that you can start a space and this top 5 caliber, one of the faces of your generation's basketball can just join this conversation that you're having. And in a span of seconds, you are now having a conversation with one of the most famous people on planet Earth. That's such a crazy thing to even wrap your head around, for real. Because growing up, bro, celebrities used to be like this untouchable figure. You know, they're just like damn near myths because of how separated you are from celebrities. But social media, close that fucking gap. Just like that, bro.
Let me explain. The premise of how I got to my takes about Kevin Durant is, like I said before, I believe that people viewed KD in a very, very high light, one of which that, in my opinion, wasn't justifiable. I think that Kevin Durant and who he is as a player today is still really, really, really great. But putting things into its proper context and what he provides to a team, I just don't think he provides enough to put himself in conversations that consist of like top 5, top 6, or even top 7 other players in the NBA.
The point we're making is that niggas hold you in a different standard. So
What standard is
I'm
that?
about to say that. When I ask people, why do they have you in their top 5? In contrast to somebody else. If somebody brings off playoff success, but then if the other nigga had more postseason success than you, then that doesn't make any sense. That's inconsistent.
And some of you are going to be like, oh, how is that even possible? He averages this, that, and a third. And it's like, man, I hate when people say this because they do the same thing with LeBron where it's like they either give him an age tax or they just read off points, rebounds, and assists and they act as if like there aren't like 8 other players putting up similar numbers. But nevertheless, my opinion on KD is solely based off of this idea that as great as a scorer as he is, and you could very well argue he's still the best scorer in the NBA, and I really wouldn't give you that much pushback behind it at all. I wouldn't agree with you, but I just wouldn't give you that much pushback. But no. Durant has somehow found himself in the top 5 conversation or amongst the elites of the elites. And for the most part, his value is heavily predicated in his scoring ability. And he's the only player, in my opinion, in the top 10 where he gets away with only providing an elite level value in one aspect of basketball. Now, back in
elite, the only player in the top 10 that only offers elite value when scoring. Jokic, scoring, passing, screening ability. Embiid. Is Embiid an elite defender still? That's my only thing. But you could still probably say Embiid's a two-way player that's well above average defensively. So I'll give it to Embiid. Giannis, same thing. Two-way play. Luka, scoring and passing / playmaking. Who else will be in that top 5? AD, two-way again. LeBron, I think he took more of a scoring role this year, but I think we all understand that LeBron can still be an elite passer and scorer if he really wanted to. But still, LeBron might be outside of the top 10 for this exact reason, I guess. JT would probably be the main guy who probably falls under this KD category. But a lot of y'all got gripes with KD. Not KD. A lot of y'all got gripes with Jason Tatum being in the top 5 conversation anyway, similar to KD. And also with JT, I think he's not an elite defender. He's not an elite passer. But he definitely provides value in other areas of the game. He's just not elite. You can honestly make the same case about KD, though. So I feel it.
In 2012, that was okay. Like in 2012, that was fine because LeBron was like really the only player else that was like in that conversation of being an all-time great, playing at an all-time high level, and was really, really great at multiple things. And Durant was second in that capacity, especially in 2012, as he ascended in that conversation. And after that, it was like maybe like Chris Paul or something like that, and maybe like Blake Griffin ascending, Anthony Davis before he turned to AD.
Weak era. No transcendent superstars in LeBron's prime? Nah, let me chill. Let me not be nasty on a Friday morning. Good morning, y'all. Did you brush your teeth? I brushed my teeth.
Paul George, Carmelo Anthony. But as you can clearly see, as much as I love a lot of those players, especially like CP, they really weren't all that good at all. In short, I don't want to make it seem like Dirk, Kobe, and Wade didn't exist, but they were aging and they were getting to a point where they weren't as impactful as they once were. So KD found himself in a time in NBA history where it was suffice enough to just be a really, really great scorer and not really have to provide anything much else at an elite level. But I think that Kevin Durant is like the only player that gets this like pass for just effectively adding value in one aspect to an elite level. And so then I got even more frustrated because how valuable can KD honestly be if every single time he goes into the postseason and the one thing that he provides at an elite level keeps dropping, like literally every single time outside of the years and he playing with Golden State. Yes, I know people are going to sit here and say,
oh, well, what about the Bucks series?
And yes, I know people are going to tell me,
what about 2012?
Because yeah, he was great in scoring in those years.
I think it's also important to understand that this whole conversation is about just scaling. Like no one is saying KD's ass. No one is saying KD's ass, but there are levels to this. When someone says KD's not in the top 5, that's not saying KD's buns. He's just not in the top 5. He might be 6, 7, or 8. But if you want to name the 5 best players in the NBA and KD's not in there, that shouldn't be disrespect. Especially, which I know Lowe does this, he gives reasoning behind every single player above him. Like this ain't just who the 5 best players in the league. You're just saying shit off the top of your head. No, these are motherfuckers that research and have these conversations regularly to have a more fleshed out top 5. So yeah.
Really denying it whatsoever. But in my humble opinion, this idea that like Kevin Durant was given this mantra or this identity of like a player like, oh, he's 7 feet tall, you can't really defend him, nobody in the league can stop him, it got tiresome because it's like I kept seeing players stop him. I kept seeing schemes defend him really, really well. I kept seeing his impact being marginalized in a postseason when athletic wings would defend him in crowded space and he has a hard time dribbling and passing and making decisions out of double teams. Like I got tired of seeing that over and over and over again and effectively just not being the same offensive weapon or engine that a lot of other players are demanded to be, and yet by default people were just putting him over these players, which kind of then brings us to where we are today, where in today's league, like the standard of being a top 5 player, respectfully, isn't like Blake Griffin or Paul George or like even Chris Paul to an extent. The level of what you need to provide from an individual standpoint is just significantly more to be a top 5 player now than it was back then, and because of that, I think we're like producing significantly better players in the process as well. So you have someone like Luka and Jokic and Giannis and Shea and Embiid.
I forgot about SGA too. My bad, John. My bad.
Even LeBron and Anthony Davis and Jason Tatum to an extent as well, where they all provide volume scoring, and though the efficiency, oh yes, Curry, because I know Curry fans are going to be upset at me, and though the efficiency may not be on par with Kevin Durant, and I'm not even saying that these players are as good as a scorer as KD, because they're not, a lot of them that I just named are not, but they still provide elite level scoring, very similar efficiency, which is something that Kevin Durant used to thrive off of, like the fact that he was hyper efficient, but a lot of those players I just named also provide very similar efficiency, if not greater, while also providing another attribute of offense or defense that is at an elite level, which just means that if they go into the postseason and they
effectively what he's saying is just the standard is higher. The standard is higher. It's kind of like showing off a triple-double in 2024, bro. Like, is it impressive? Absolutely. But there's motherfuckers averaging triple-doubles. You know what I'm saying? And even within averaging triple-doubles, there's just kind of levels to it. You know? Some people are doing it efficiently. Some people are doing it efficiently and winning. And I'm not saying triple-doubles in terms of, like, just the concept of this motherfucker night in and night out is capable of giving you 38 and 8 type shit. You know? That's just the league that we live in. And again, all the names that he mentioned, they are capable of giving you 30 on an average night. Not just on any given, on an average night. Giving you an efficient 30 the same way KD does as well. So KD from a scoring perspective is in this class. But the separator is these other guys provide other things outside of just scoring. Which makes sense. It makes sense.
Struggle with their scoring, they can still impact the game in other ways that just, in my opinion, makes them more valuable than KD. That the value of who KD is as a player has been very, very contingent on the idea of him being the best scorer in the NBA. But if that value continues to be challenged every single year we go into the postseason, why by default does he get to just be considered this player that I just don't think that he is? And I think a much bigger picture about depicting KD in this light was highlighting one of his flaws, and famously, while talking to him in Twitter space, I kind of just talked about rim pressure. And it's ironic because last season, though I do think against the Denver Nuggets, he did see multiple bodies, and I do believe that he was having the defense rotate a little bit. His inability to be the passer that is necessary to kind of pull that off really held him back in that series. But here we are in this series, and effectively he lost the series the same way that I knew he was going to lose, because no, as great as a player Kevin Durant is, as great as a scorer that KD is, he doesn't shift the defense enough. He just doesn't. He doesn't get downhill. He doesn't put that much pressure on the defense. They are fine with him tempting contested two-pointers. And in all honesty, that's a whole problem with the Phoenix Suns as a whole. Like, that's their entire team identity. That's something that they've been struggling with for the past like 2 to 3 years now. They don't get that many shots at the rim. They don't get that many shots from behind the arc, and or they don't get that many shots at the free throw line. And those are the most effective and efficient looks in the NBA. I'm sorry to all those skill guys who love to talk about, oh, over the shoulder, back down, and all that shit. Like, I know those things matter. I'm not denying that they don't matter. But the truth of the matter is, like, you have to at some point be able to produce at levels that can outscore your opponent. And if you're
my only thing is, the only pushback I have so far is I understand that there is more to the conversation than just scoring, but I also don't want to get to a point where we're pulling off the, I mean, what is Steph Curry without shooting? What if Shaq if he wasn't as big as he was type shit. So, like, I get it with the Jokic, Giannis, SGA, Luka conversation. I think those four specifically clear KD. And at that point, if you're really fighting for that top spot, that fifth spot that hard, are you really top 5 for real? The point is you're not tier 1 at the very least. But comparing, let's say, KD to an Anthony Davis, and this is with no disrespect to Anthony Davis, because I see the argument for AD. I do still feel as if KD is such a better scorer, and the fact that you can rely on him to get a bucket on his own from so many different areas, that still supersedes the overall value of Anthony Davis, given that while KD is not an elite playmaker, he's still a pretty decent playmaker in my opinion. And then on the defensive end, I mean, listen, the Suns asked for KD to be a really big part of that defense. Was he an elite defensive anchor? I'm not going to say that, but I would still say he's good defensively. So when you take a great scorer that's still a good passer playmaker and still a good defender, you can still make a case for that guy because of how good of a scorer he is compared to other dudes who may have better two-way value or may have better passing abilities but isn't as good of a scorer, if that makes sense.
Your opponent is just getting better, more efficient looks on a much more consistent basis than you are. It doesn't really matter how great you are with your turnaround fadeaway jumper. A contested 2 is still a contested 2. We're getting layups on the other side. Like, we'll live with you shooting 55% on contested 2s, which is still amazing. But if we're making our 2s at like a 65% clip, we're going to win by default. Like, I don't know what to tell you all. I know it's really hard to contextualize that, but like, that's just effectively what's going on right now. And so that's the part of like, I told you so. And I'm right, because that's literally why you lost this series. It's why you've consistently struggled in the postseason beyond your years playing next to Curry and Clay and Draymond when they had ample floor spacing, passers, playmakers, player movement. Those are all things that you benefited immensely from. And quiet is kept, even though, yes, the floor spacing in OKC wasn't the greatest. That's still something that you benefited from in OKC as well. Like, you played alongside Russell Westbrook and James Harden, two really, really great passers and playmakers that provided quality looks for you and your teammates as well, that kept the offense sustainable at a very high level throughout the regular season and post. I know that people don't want to hear that. They just like the idea of like 50, 40, 90, and he put up 30 points and da-da-da. Like, I get that point. But like, at the end of the day, effectively, like, bro, you still benefited from the passing and playmaking that is necessary to shift defenses, to give everybody quality looks, to amplify and maximize the offense from a team standpoint. And just not being able to provide that, in my opinion, is why I didn't think that he was top 5. It's why I question the value of who he is as a player every single year. It's why he continues to lose a lot of these series in the postseason beyond his years alongside Stephen Curry. But more importantly, it's why I think we just need to have a much more thorough conversation about what it actually means to be an offensive hub, or what it actually means to be a competent offensive unit in the NBA. And this is where KD was right. Like, trust me when I say this. I want to be able to get in front of this camera and
I think the reason why this shit is not hitting, going back to what he said originally, is because I think Lowe knows that while the video is about KD, and I'm not gonna act like KD performed horrible, I'm not gonna also act like he performed great as well. I think the reason why the pack ain't hitting is because he knows, man, the reason why Phoenix lost wasn't because of KD. Well, I don't want to speak for him, but I feel like as if I'm gonna speak for just myself. Bro, KD is not the reason why Phoenix lost, dog. From all the quotes afterwards about their GM, talking about the construction of this team and how proud they are about the assets that they got, how out of the 29 other teams in the league, 26 of them would rather have Phoenix's situation. Like, what are we doing? I think the biggest reason why this team lost is because of the front office. I'm going to keep it a stack. And even if we want to blame players, Bradley Beal is a bigger part of the blame. He just is. And I think for what was asked of D-Book, I would even argue that D-Book was a bigger part of the blame than KD. It just is. It just is. Now, I think the reason why I'm not letting KD off the hook is because, again, if you want to consider him a top 5 player, I'm going to hold you to that standard. And I didn't really feel any dominant performances from KD this whole playoff run, or in that one series specifically, in those 4 games specifically. You know what I'm saying? I think top 5 players do step up when their name is called, when their backs are against the wall. And I just really didn't get that performance from KD. I just didn't. So, but I'll also say this too. I don't think this year specifically, the KD is top 5 argument has been the least amount of pressure, or I'm wording it wrong, but the conversations about KD being top 5 has not been the most egregious compared to years past. You know what I'm saying? I think we are getting to a point where we accept where KD is. I think we are getting to a point where we are accepting the top 4 players in the league for who they are, or at the very least the top 3: Giannis, Jokic, and Luka. Giannis, Jokic, Luka, and then after that is probably SGA and Joel Embiid. And then after that, we can get into the KD conversations and the Tatum, AD, and Bron conversations, right? But I think as an NBA community, I just don't think we're that hard on KD this year because, hey, the expectations aren't that much anymore. I think there is more realistic expectations when it comes to a 36-year-old Kevin Durant on this team specifically.
laugh and tell you I told you. So I really will like to do that. I would love to do it. I actually kind of did it on stream the other night. I lost a bit of my mind. I got brooms and everything, and I did that exact same thing. But in the moment of like reflecting and acknowledging part of which I was wrong in as well, and that is part of the conversation that KD and I had in that Twitter space is like how us as a community, we talk about basketball and like how it's so narrative driven and it gets dumbed down to like the simplest form of like, oh, he doesn't have the guts to win or he's not a leader and like that type of bullshit.
I just think when you
accountability.
break the 3-point line, not necessarily, you don't always necessarily have to get to the rim, but I think you can create a lot if you just break the 3-point line. You know what I'm saying? Our game is played behind the 3-point line. I feel like a lot of teams, a lot of players can settle, just shoot a lot of threes. But once you break that, you're going to get the defense to react. Now, if you get all the way to the rim, that's cool. But sometimes you can just touch the paint, beginning of the paint, and then you can create something or take an easy shot. I feel like if I pull up in the lane, regardless of laying the ball up, that's a layup to me.
That kind of like really negates a lot of the nuances that are necessary to kind of give accurate depictions of what's actually occurring on the floor on a game-to-game basis. And it's a reason why, in my opinion, people put KD in conversations that he doesn't belong in. And it's why many people thought that the Phoenix Suns are going to win, because in their mind, it's just like, oh, they have 3 scorers and 3 scorers can put up a lot of points. Like that's just in their mind. That's how a lot of things just like work to them internally.
I think that's the unfortunate part about the KD slander is, I'm going to keep it a stack, like, KD is a dude that keeps to himself, and I think honestly similar to Kyrie. Kyrie's different. I'm not about to say that. I ain't gonna lie, because Kyrie has said a lot, but like it comes from a place of, yo, your fans are wilding out, dog. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like the chicken versus the egg conversation, and I'm gonna keep it a stack. I think that whole conversation wasn't even directed towards KD. It was more so directed towards KD fans and how KD fans talk about KD. It's just, as KD, that being my fan base, it's natural to get defensive. It's natural to feel like the criticism isn't for your fans, it's for me. You know what I'm saying? So, I host a podcast, Let's Keep It a Buck. I think a lot of y'all know that, actually. If someone said, fuck Let's Keep It a Buck, and their well, not fuck Let's Keep It a Buck, but someone was criticizing our fans, yo, Let's Keep It a Buck fans, they be gassing up that podcast, y'all. They be making it seem like, you know what I'm saying, it's the greatest thing on earth. Man, that podcast ain't like that, dog, for real. Maybe that ain't like that part is where, like, if I hear that, what you mean we ain't like that? But in face value, that probably should have been interpreted as, yo, your fans are just gassing y'all up like y'all fucking Joe Rogan, but y'all aren't Joe Rogan yet. You know what I'm saying? So I feel it. I think another situation not even related to this was Bruce and Rage and their little debacle lately with Rage calling out DEO and Bruce being defensive about Rage calling out his community. You know what I'm saying? I think it's just natural to have this response from KD, but I think it is also important to recognize, especially moving forward, with the amount of examples I've seen of this, that, yo, the shots are not directed at you. They're directed at your fan base. Now, if you as the creator, if you as the leader or the thing that fan base is about, takes it personal that you're attacking your fan base, and it's kind of like a direct one-on-one line to disrespecting you, I guess that's where the conversation is. But to me, I just, as much as I can, I try to separate the two different types of criticism.
Of just actually like taking a time out and watching them play, understanding their strengths and weaknesses, and understanding like, bro, you still need a playmaker to like really shift the defense and create advantages for everyone on the team, not just an individual trying to kill someone in one-on-one situations with constant backline help, right? And because we don't have those conversations, there was a part where Kevin Durant was basically telling me, and famously was telling me how, oh, I just hate the way that you all talk about basketball, and I just said I agree.
I just think how y'all even look at the game is whack as fuck. Like playoff success, like you
Lo was getting cooked for this. Hold on, I'm gonna let it play out.
factor in team success when you talking about players. I just think how y'all consume the game is trash. Like, are you good or not?
I agree. Now it's crazy, and this is why.
Look at him laughing. Nah, bro, because that moment was so crazy. You just had to be there. I'm just saying the energy, not necessarily from Low, but just the energy of KD ain't this. KD shit. KD walks into the room. I mean, I just hate how y'all talk about basketball. And Low goes, I agree. Nah, bro, he was getting baked. He was getting baked.
He's right, and why I know he's frustrated. It's also funny to me because people think that like I don't talk to athletes, like I don't talk to NBA players, like they can't imagine, like, oh my God, you don't even know what you're talking about. No one doesn't care about you, and I'm like, God, trust me, God. Yeah, let's just, you keep living in your mind where they don't care about what people say about them in the space. I don't understand why people think that like that's just how that functions, but all right, fine, whatever. Yes, I have talked to athletes, I have talked to NBA players, and I've done so directly and indirectly in many capacities, and I'm telling you, they do care about the way that the game is being articulated in a way, because they understand that their livelihood, their legacy, who they are as people is being discussed in a manner in which in some ways just isn't fair. Sometimes they benefit from this, but a lot of times they just don't, and I think that it is unfair to them. And the point that Kevin Durant was trying to make is that the way that he gets depicted at times, or the situation gets depicted at times, is unfair, because instead of actually talking about the nuances of the game, we have to sit here and just talk about who's the leader, who's the bus rider, who's taking the last shot down the stretch, instead of actually discussing like the nuances, the X and O's of like what's happening and why certain things are happening. And that I agree with. And the irony of it all is that not only did the mainstream media provide the evidence to prove that being the case, because you have Bleacher Report who stripped...
I think I'm gonna be honest with you, when it comes to these narratives, Twitter has been the biggest pundit and the biggest like culprit in pushing this type of conversation. The fact that Twitter specifically and TikTok honestly has amplified this effect more, the fact that motherfuckers can really get shit off in under 280 characters. Now, 280, mind you, is a new thing. The max in the past was 140. Like, the fact that there's this platform that gives you a shit ton of clout for shit that you say in under 140 characters, it incentivizes motherfuckers to get shit off without adding nuance, because you literally can't add nuance outside of 140 characters. Outside of making a whole YouTube video, outside of watching a whole podcast, when the main hub of the conversation, at least to me, and I think the circles that KD specifically is talking about, is Twitter, and is now honestly TikTok, and now that these other platforms who were long form is embracing short form content as well, it's like I don't blame the creator, because again, I'm sorry, hey, I only got 140 characters to work with. But it's also like, damn, bro, what happened to the nuanced conversations? They are still there. But trust me right now, even if you got Twitter Blue, post a whole fucking paragraph. Let me see how many likes you about to get. And at that point, you're about to be spending all this energy to write a paragraph that no one even wants to read. But if you just tweet out, man, KD buns. Or maybe not that, because everyone's fucking saying that, but just something a little bit more slick, something a little bit more narrative driven, something a little bit more relatable, something that someone can read on a quick glance and say, damn, he's spitting facts. Retweet. That's what Twitter is. That's what TikTok is. And unfortunately, it is just part of the game.
Out like 2 hours worth of a conversation about who Kevin Durant is as a player, why, as great as he is, he's not top 5, what's necessary to kind of structure an offense, instead of talking about all of the nuances of passing, playmaking, the value.
Also, I think the problem with the top 5 conversation to me is just even that conversation isn't nuanced enough. I think that was the problem with Lowe's conversation. Because let's keep it a stack, bro. The top 5 conversation is an arbitrary number. I think when we say top 5, the connotation is being a tier 1 player in the league. But as Lowe just mentioned in this video, depending on what era, what year you're talking about, being top 5 holds more weight in X year compared to X year because of the talent in the league, right? Being top 5 now, especially if there's 4 clear motherfuckers that everyone else unanimously agrees is better than you, it's like, yeah, you're top 5, But the four is right here, and you're right here though. So are you really top 5? No, the conversation really is, what the conversation really should be about is who are the tier 1 players in the league. And I think when we have that conversation, if KD is tier 1 or not, I think that's a more nuanced conversation of having the top 5 conversation. Because I personally feel as if that's what the top 5 conversation is really about. You know what I'm saying? I don't give a fuck if you're 5, if you're not really in the tier 1 conversation. Honestly, if there was a clear gap between the top 3 and 4 and 5, I don't give a fuck if you're 4. Because you're still not tier 1. That's how it just works in my head. And I think that makes sense, though. I think that makes sense. But that's just me.
With that and leveraging your scoring ability to make sure you can still provide playmaking value, and how can you take advantage of mismatches, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of things that we discussed in that space, it just got devolved into, oh, athlete make fun of fan. And it's like, bro, we completely overlooked a huge part of what was being said in that entire space. And because you overlooked what was being said in that space, it's the reason why 365 days later, you all still believe that Kevin Durant is going to be able to lead teams past really great defensive units who have the personnel to stop him. It's the reason why you numbskulls still believe that no one in the NBA can defend KD. It's so funny to me because KD at the press conference, he was kind of talking about this as well, where he was like, he kind of alluded to the idea, like, I could go into like the nuances and like what was going on, but y'all, at the end of the day, y'all would just call it excuses. And that sucks. Like, I think there should be space in a platform where you should be able to talk about the nuances of the game. And if you can't do it in a post-game interview, I mean, like, it's a huge reason why.
That is facts, though, because especially now, it's crazy because it used to be all the criticism was for players. I think now it just goes straight to the coach. Well, when we talk about why a team did not got it done, there's so many moving parts. There's so many moving parts to an organization that to just boil it down to a handful of players, to just one player, you can say they have majority blame. Majority does not mean 100%, though. Majority could mean out of these 10 pieces, Brody got 30%. You know what I'm saying? There's so many moving parts as to how and why a franchise could succeed and not succeed that just having, man, it's the coach's fault. Man, it's KD's fault. He didn't get it done. He don't got that dog in him. That shit is so fucking lame to me, dog. That shit is so lame to me. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't matter who we're criticizing. Again, it could be the coach, you get a player. It could even be the front office. It could, because I ain't gonna lie, some moves do make sense. You outweighed the risk to the reward. You made the play that you made. Shit just didn't pan out. Or you made the play that you made thinking that this dude really got that dog in him, but then he came onto this team and became a completely different person. Like, what the fuck like, injuries as well, it's a part of it. There is a luck factor as well in all of this. So, it is unfair to the players. And I do like that we are shifting the blame to other people, but it's just going to one person, in my opinion. But
a lot of NBA players are creating their own platforms now. Like, shout out to Mind the Game, because they speak the game in a sense of like much more nuance, much more depth, better understanding, so you can further contextualize what's exactly happening. And it's unfortunate mainstream media has not provided those platforms to these players, because if you did so, I do believe that many of you all would have understood what I was saying, and you wouldn't just grab a soundbite out of a 2-hour long space and just thought to yourself, oh, he got you. You don't know what you're talking about because you never played basketball. I really hate that argument. I just hate the idea like somebody who doesn't play basketball can't talk about basketball. Like, in no other walks of life can that ever exist. Like, that's effectively saying, like, you go to a restaurant, you sit down, the spaghetti is undercooked, the meatballs are raw, the sauce is bitter, and then you complain to the chef like, hey, like, yeah, my food doesn't taste good. And then the chef is like, oh, well, are you a chef? Have you been cooking for 12 years? Have you been, no? Okay, then shut up and eat the food. Like, that's effectively what y'all are saying. I just think that's so dumb, especially when many people like myself who are fans who aren't playing basketball, who aren't coaching it, who aren't that deeply rooted into it, somehow can continue to accurately depict what's exactly going to happen in the series, and yet we don't get the proper credit and necessary, I guess, praise that we deserve, in large part because, again, every conversation just dissolves into like, oh, fan doesn't know as much as NBA player. Bro, that just really annoys me. It really does annoy me. All right.
Attack the point. That's my motto when it comes to arguments. Not even arguments, just conversations, dude. Attack the point, not the person. Specifically sports. I think there's other areas in life where, experience does matter way more. But when we're talking about putting a ball in a fucking hoop, and I know that's such an oversimplification of basketball, but when we're talking about sports, dude, when we're talking about, let's say, like film and music, bro, attack the point, not the person. I do think this specific gripe happens in the sports community way more because motherfuckers got egos and they love gatekeeping. I think the only areas in life where I truly feel as if, like, yo, if you don't have experience in this shit, truly don't talk about it, is anything medical. Anything in the medical field. I would probably say anything in the law field. I would be hella cautious to say anything because I just don't have the proper training to give advice on that matter. But outside of that, dog, if we're talking about Twitter takes, if we're talking about basketball conversations, because we've seen it so many times, dude. There is not a one-to-one correlation with how good you are at the sport of basketball and how much you know about basketball. Even within the Mind of the Game podcast, you can see it right there. JJ was never LeBron, but there's still respect. And I understand they both played pro, but the concept of downplaying someone because they aren't as good of a basketball player as another person still applies in that podcast. Still applies. Now, you might still say LeBron is smarter, but the idea that LeBron does respect a dude that isn't better at basketball than him, that exists. And even if you don't want to say that, bro, literally one of the smartest coach in the league, in a lot of people's eyes, Eric Spoelstra, he might have played pro ball, I believe, but again, he never played in the NBA. He definitely wasn't an MVP, wasn't a finals MVP, wasn't a tier 1 player, all of these things. But he went into the lab, and he's one of the smartest basketball minds that we know. You know what I'm saying? So, I don't know. It's always going to be a losing fight against the jocks when the jocks can little bro you. You know what I'm saying? It is what it is. It's also harder to fight that fight when you're not athletic. You know what I'm saying? But it is what it is. Hey, shout out to Love for the video. Links to Love video will be in the description down below. And I'm going to catch y'all on the next one, man. Peace.